There is a moment that almost every narcissist believes will happen, a moment they count on, a moment they often wait for with complete confidence. It is the moment when the person they hurt comes running back. The message arrives, the phone rings, the apology appears, the pleading begins. For many narcissists, this is not just a possibility, it is an expectation. They believe their absence creates a vacuum that no one can resist filling. They believe their silence will make you panic. They believe that sooner or later you will return looking for answers, closure, validation, or another chance. And for a long time, that belief often seems justified, because manipulation does not always look like manipulation. Sometimes it looks like affection. Sometimes it looks like concern. Sometimes it looks like love. Behind the scenes, however, something much deeper is happening. Many narcissists spend years creating emotional patterns that keep people attached to them. They learn which buttons to push. They learn how to create confusion. They learn how to make someone question their own judgment. They learn how to make a person feel responsible for problems they did not create. Over time, many victims become trapped in a cycle that feels impossible to escape. The more they are ignored, the harder they try. The more they are blamed, the more they explain themselves. The more they are rejected, the more they seek approval. And this creates a dangerous illusion. The narcissist starts believing that their control is permanent. They begin to think that no matter what happens, the other person will always come back. That is where the biggest mistake is made, because there is one outcome they rarely prepare for: silence. Not angry silence, not silence used as a weapon, not silence meant to punish. Real silence, the kind that comes from healing. The kind that comes from self-respect. The kind that appears when someone finally understands that chasing a person who enjoys being chased only strengthens the cycle. And when that silence arrives, something unexpected begins to happen. The narcissist waits, then waits a little longer. Days pass, weeks pass, sometimes months pass. The text never comes. The apology never comes. The desperation they expected never appears. Suddenly, the script they spent years relying on no longer works. That is when the balance of power starts to shift. Most people never hear about this side of the story. They hear about the manipulation. They hear about the lies. They hear about the emotional damage. But very few people talk about what happens inside the mind of a narcissist when the person they expected to beg simply walks away and never looks back. The truth is far more fascinating than most people realize. There are psychological reasons why silence can feel so unsettling to someone who depends on control. There are hidden emotional dynamics that many people never notice. There are reactions that often occur behind closed doors, long after the relationship appears to be over. And some of those reactions may surprise you. In this video, you will learn why narcissists often expect people to chase them after a breakup or conflict. You will discover the hidden assumptions that fuel that expectation. You will learn what your silence communicates, even when you never say a single word. You will understand the psychological impact that occurs when a narcissist loses the attention, validation, and control they once took for granted. You will also discover why some narcissists suddenly return after long periods of absence and what their unexpected reappearance may really mean. Most importantly, you will learn why refusing to beg is not about winning a game. It is not about revenge. It is not about making someone suffer. It is about reclaiming something that may have been slowly taken from you for years: your confidence, your peace, your identity. And before this video ends, we will reveal one of the most powerful truths about narcissistic relationships. A truth that explains why the person who stops chasing often gains something far more valuable than control. So stay with us until the very end, because each part of this story builds on the next. And the final lesson may completely change the way you see silence, healing, and personal power. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy deep insights into narcissism, psychology, emotional healing, relationships, and personal growth, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a future video. Now let us begin. Most narcissists do not walk away as casually as people think. On the surface, it may look like they are done with the relationship. It may seem as though they have lost interest, moved on, or simply decided that you no longer matter. But beneath that appearance, there is often a hidden expectation. Many narcissists create distance expecting a reaction. The distance itself becomes part of the strategy. When they stop calling, they expect you to notice. When they become cold, they expect you to become anxious. When they disappear, they expect you to come looking for them. The goal is not always separation. The goal is often validation. They want proof that they still matter. They want evidence that they still occupy space in your thoughts. Every message you send, every attempt to reach them, every effort to repair the situation becomes confirmation that they remain important. For someone who relies heavily on external validation, this reaction can feel incredibly rewarding. It creates a sense of power. It creates a sense of control. And over time, many narcissists begin to depend on these reactions. That is why silence from you often feels impossible in their minds. They convince themselves that you need them too much to stay away. They believe their absence will create panic. They assume emotional dependence. They expect confusion. They expect sadness. Most importantly, they expect pursuit. Without pursuit, the entire strategy begins to lose its effectiveness. This expectation rarely appears overnight. It develops through repeated experiences and learned patterns that may have been building for years. Many narcissists spend long periods conditioning people around them, not always in obvious ways. Sometimes the process is subtle. They reward certain behaviors. They punish others. They give affection when things go their way. They withdraw affection when they do not. At first, these shifts can seem random. One day, they are warm and loving. The next day, they are distant and critical. The inconsistency creates uncertainty, and uncertainty often creates attachment. People naturally seek stability. When stability disappears, they start working harder to restore it. This is where many victims become trapped. They begin searching for answers. They start analyzing every conversation. They replay arguments in their minds. They look for mistakes. They try harder. They give more. They apologize more often. Sometimes they even accept blame for things they never did, not because they are weak, not because they lack intelligence, but because they are trying to restore peace. The narcissist often misinterprets this behavior. They do not see a person struggling to survive emotional chaos. They see proof of their own importance. They mistake desperation for devotion. They mistake anxiety for love. They mistake emotional dependency for genuine admiration. As this pattern repeats, something dangerous begins to happen. Their confidence grows. Then it grows even more. Eventually, they begin to believe they are irreplaceable. They start viewing themselves as the center of the relationship. They assume their presence is essential. They assume their absence is devastating. And because nobody has challenged this belief for so long, it starts feeling like a fact. That is where overconfidence enters the picture. The narcissist becomes convinced that the outcome is predictable. No matter how badly they behave, no matter how much damage they cause, no matter how many times they leave, the other person will eventually come back. At least that is what they expect. Then something happens that completely disrupts the pattern. You stop chasing, not because you are playing a game, not because you are trying to prove a point, but because you are exhausted. You stop sending messages. You stop explaining your intentions. You stop defending yourself against accusations. You stop trying to convince someone of your value. You stop fighting for acceptance from a person determined to misunderstand you. For the first time, the cycle is interrupted. And when the cycle stops, something unusual begins to unfold. The narcissist waits. At first, there is confidence. They expect your message tomorrow, then next week, then soon after that. The silence does not concern them immediately because they believe they already know how the story ends. But time passes. The expected reaction never arrives. Days become weeks. Weeks become longer stretches of silence. Slowly, confidence begins turning into uncertainty. The script they relied on is no longer working, and that is where your silence starts communicating something powerful. Silence can say things that words never could. Arguments can be dismissed. Explanations can be ignored. Emotional conversations can be twisted and rewritten. But genuine silence is different. It cannot be debated. It cannot be manipulated as easily. It simply exists. Your silence tells a story. It suggests that your emotional world no longer revolves around their approval. It suggests growth. It suggests healing. It suggests that you are building a life that does not depend on their validation. For someone who expected endless pursuit, this can be difficult to process because control depends on access. Control depends on reactions. Control depends on emotional investment. When those things disappear, an uncomfortable reality emerges. They are no longer the center of your attention. For many narcissists, this realization creates significant psychological discomfort. Validation functions like emotional fuel. The attention of others reinforces their self-image. It helps maintain the belief that they are important, influential, and impossible to forget. When that validation suddenly disappears, questions begin to surface. Questions they may not openly admit. Why did they stop calling? Why are they not reaching out? Why do they seem unaffected? Did they finally move on? Am I losing influence? Am I no longer important to them? These questions can become increasingly difficult to ignore. The loss of control often feels more threatening than the loss of the relationship itself. Because relationships can be replaced, control is harder to replace. This is one reason some narcissists eventually return. Not every return is motivated by love. Not every return is motivated by regret. Sometimes the return is driven by curiosity. Sometimes it is driven by wounded pride. Sometimes it is driven by the need for reassurance. They want confirmation that they still matter. They want proof that the connection still exists. The return is not always dramatic. It can appear in small and unexpected ways. A casual message, a reaction online, a random question, a sudden attempt to reconnect after months of silence. These actions often serve a purpose. They test the situation. They measure your response. They look for evidence that their influence remains intact. And that is where many people misunderstand the situation. They assume silence is simply another tactic. They treat it as a game with winners and losers. But true healing does not operate that way. Healing is not about making someone suffer. It is not about creating jealousy. It is not about teaching lessons. The moment silence becomes another strategy for attention, the old cycle begins again. Real freedom comes from letting go of the need to control the outcome. Because the greatest surprise for a narcissist is not anger. Anger still contains emotional investment. Anger still demonstrates attachment. The reaction that often creates the deepest impact is something entirely different. It is indifference. It is the realization that the person they expected to chase them has chosen peace instead. It is seeing someone become stronger without their approval. It is watching someone grow beyond the reach of manipulation. And for a person who built their confidence on controlling reactions, Emotional freedom is often the one thing they never expected to face. As we come to the end of this discussion, there is one truth worth remembering. If you refuse to beg, you did something incredibly powerful. It may not have felt powerful at the time. In fact, it may have felt painful. It may have felt lonely. There were probably moments when you questioned yourself, moments when you wondered whether staying silent was the right choice, moments when reaching out seemed easier than sitting with the uncertainty. But every time you chose not to chase, you were doing something much bigger than avoiding a message or resisting an impulse. You were breaking a pattern that may have controlled your emotions, your decisions, and your sense of self for far too long. For many people, the hardest part of leaving a narcissistic relationship is not walking away. It is staying away. It is learning to stop seeking validation from the very person who caused the pain. It is accepting that closure may never come from them. It is realizing that your worth does not depend on their approval, and that realization changes everything. Because the moment you stop begging for respect, you begin respecting yourself. The moment you stop chasing love, you create space for real love to enter your life. The moment you stop fighting to prove your value, you begin recognizing the value that was already there. That is why your silence matters. Not because it punishes the narcissist, not because it makes them regret their choices, not because it gives you power over them. It matters because it gives you power over yourself. And that is the kind of power that lasts. The truth is, whether the narcissist understands your silence or not does not change its value. Whether they miss you or not does not change its value. Whether they come back or not does not change its value. Your healing is not dependent on their reaction. Your growth is not dependent on their understanding. Your future is not dependent on their approval. The day you stopped begging was the day you started reclaiming your power, not because the narcissist lost, but because you finally stopped losing yourself. And that may be the greatest victory of all. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment below and write, "I stopped chasing and found my peace." Your story may inspire someone else who is struggling through the same journey right now. If you found value in this video, please take a moment to like this video. It helps more people discover these important messages about narcissism, healing, emotional freedom, and personal growth. And if you are not already subscribed, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our future videos. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and thank you for choosing yourself. We will see you in the next video.